Is it true what they say about Julie?
There she is. Let's ask her.
Julie, did you really go out with an alien?
Uh-huh.
What was it like?
Real different.
By the way, where'd you meet him?
I was nude sunbathing on my patio when he was checking me out from his UFO. Guess he couldn't take it 'cause he lost his...
Hello and welcome to another Drive-In Double Feature. I'm Ryan.
I'm Nathan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before we get into anything, we got a Patreon over at patreon.com/drive-in-double-feature-podcast. It's just a little fun area where Nathan and I play some games, have some conversations. Who knows what we'll do to entertain you fans, but just something we give to you as a thank you for supporting us. If you choose not to, don't worry. It doesn't affect any regular content. But today, we're going to be talking about 1988's Earth Girls Are Easy, directed by Julian Temple. And this movie is the launching point for a lot of careers for this movie, mainly Jim Carrey and Damon Wayans. And Gena Davis and Jeff Goldblum are once again reunited after doing the movie The Fly. And they would go on to marry each other during the production of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't seen it, it's about these aliens that come to Earth and they want to score. There
Pretty
you go.
much. Yeah, easy. And they land in Gena Davis's home in the valley.
But this movie is so silly. It is.
Mm-hmm.
It's part musical, part comedy, and I was so entertained watching this movie. It's fantastic.
Oh, I love this movie. It was great. I'd never seen it before, and it was an absolute joy to watch. It had me laughing out loud like multiple times. It's just silly. It's a good time. It reminds me a lot of something like Hairspray or a little Shop of Horrors, like those movies where it's just like a silly musical. But this time it's like super 80s, which is awesome.
Oh yeah, this movie's 1988, but the 80s threw up all over this movie, and it is. Everybody's got these ridiculous outfits and ridiculous hair, and that's just how it is. And Gena Davis plays a beautician, something like that, and her husband ends up cheating on, or fiance ends up cheating on her, which is a really funny moment because before she does that, she has like this big makeover scene, and that's like when our first musical number kicks in.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
They have like this state-of-the-art technology to show her exactly what she would look like if she changed all her. It's like, oh, well, why don't we just make you a blonde with blue eyes? That'll look great.
Yeah, and they have like a computer there, and like it makes her look horrifying with the blonde hair and blue eyes in the computer. And yeah, it's like a joke on like makeovers and movies is the way I took it. Like, oh, we're gonna make you like the new hot girl or whatever, and this movie has a thing for blonde women, which is so silly.
Yeah, well, that scene too. It's almost like parodying, kind of like I guess like Grease, where the main character completely changes her appearance just to appease the guy, and it's just like, oh yeah, well, it's obviously the way you look. That's the problem. So we have to make it look like something more appealing. And this guy that she's dating or engaged to is just a total jerk. Like just like horrible human being. Where Charles Rocket, who his main performance you might remember from Dumb and Dumber as the main bad guy.
And he was fired from SNL. That's like his big blunder because he cursed on live TV.
He said the F word,
yeah, which is sad. His whole career, how it ended. But I always like seeing him in movies. He plays a jerk really well.
So I'm glad you mentioned SNL because I don't know when I'm ever going to be able to bring this up.
Okay,
but the season 6 was like a very infamous season because they had fired like the original cast of SNL, and they were like, oh, we got to bring in these new players to come in, and Charles Rocket was one of them, and they had to explain what type of personalities that they had. Like, so there's like a scene like at the like one of the first skits where they're all lined up and they have to say, "Oh, I'm like this past cast member."
Oh
and
my God.
Charles Rocket said, "I'm like a mix between Chevy Chase and Bill Murray."
I do not get that at all. That's so funny. That sounds about right. Yeah, because I know that's like the infamous, like, nobody likes that season, right? Like everyone says like that one is like bad.
It's pretty awful, but
Yeah,
it led to a lot of different changes. But anyway, getting back on getting back onto track. Like I said, Charles Rocket plays the fiance, and he's just a total jerk. And
he won't sleep with Gena Davis. It's been 2 weeks since they've had sex, and
practically an eternity for this movie.
Yeah. This gets whispered. One of the funniest moments is whenever the girl who knows that's been 2 weeks whispers to the other woman, like just some random woman. She's like, 2 weeks, like just so amazed. No, it's silly. But yeah, like, so she does that, right? She gets made over, blonde hair, blue eyes, and she's waiting for Chris Rocket. And to add on to the jerk thing, he's brought in a new nurse to sleep with. But Gena Davis, in the silliness of the movie, takes so long to realize he's like brought a new woman over, saying this loud, but she's hiding in the closet, like, I'm gonna surprise him. Doesn't hear this woman's voice.
Well, yeah, and then she comes out of the closet, and then she's like, "Oh, you must be a friend of my fiance." And she's like, "Huh?" And and then Charles Rocket comes in, and he sees Gena Davis, but she's got like a blonde wig on, and he's like, "Oh, who's your friend? Even more fun for me, right?" And then he realizes it, and just such a silly scene because like everyone in there just acts so goofy.
Yeah, exactly. And then it leads to a big fight, and then another great musical number. And I really love the imagery of that musical number because it's her destroying all of his stuff, like sticking the stopwatch down the garbage disposal to wreck it, and just like microwaving a football. It's just fun.
Puts a bowling ball into a ramp and like runs it down to his like Commodore computer.
Yeah, it's a good one. And God, it's just, I don't know. There's something about seeing all this old technology and everything. Like you said, it's 80s threw up on this movie because we watch a lot of 80s movies, and like, but this one, there's just something about it. Like it's just so 80s.
Now let me ask you, do you think that was intentional, or do you think that was like, this is going to be totally stylish because it's so accurate to the times?
Part of me wants to say that it was intentional because the movie seems almost like a parody, and it came at the tail end of the 80s, right? 80s becoming 90s. So maybe it was a parody of 80s culture because they reference MTV a lot, like MTV's a joke and stuff like that. So I don't know. I was asking myself that question throughout this whole movie. Is like, is this movie just like a silly comedy, or is it also like a silly comedy but making fun of the 80s as well?
I think it was a parody.
Yeah.
I want to say, because this movie does seem very self-aware of what it's trying to do. But it's so surprising. I mean, though, this movie was a total box office bomb, and it got very poor reviews on its initial release. This movie cost $100 million.
No way.
No, sorry, $10 million.
Oh. It's like you scared me. I was like, no.
This movie cost $10 million, but still they only made $3 million.
Wow,
and
crazy.
And it was almost like because Jeff Goldblum was a very big star at the time this movie came out. Like he had just come off of doing The Fly. He had done like The Big Chill, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So he had a pretty impressive resume. But then like after this, like during like the 80s, like late 80s, early 90s, he kind of fell into this career slump, I would say. And
he did. Yeah.
But then he would kind of revitalize himself almost like with Jurassic Park.
And he'd play into like that kind of persona he developed for himself, because in this movie he's not really, and he kind of plays Jeff Goldblum, what we would think now in older movies, but not to the extent of post Jurassic Park, I think. And this one especially, he's playing an alien. You don't really see that like over the top Jeff Goldblum thing going on at all in this movie.
No, and he's honestly the most subdued of the aliens. And
yeah, which makes sense because I guess he's not the comedian of the three. He's supposed to be kind of like the straight man of the bunch.
Right, he's the heartthrob of the group, but we haven't gotten into the other aliens at all. I mean, it's these three aliens are up in outer space, and while Jeff Goldblum character is sleeping, they're the best way to describe them is that they look like walking shag carpets, kind of.
Yeah, they're kind of gross to look at.
Yeah, they're like Jim Carrey's character is all red, like this real thick red fur. Damon Wayans has real thick yellow fur, and then Jeff Goldblum has really thick blue fur. And they're out in outer space, and the Damon Wayans, Whiplock and Zebo, as they're called, they're really wanting to score some action, and then they're spying on Gena Davis from outer space, and then they crash land into Gena Davis's pool. And and then Gena Davis goes in and checks it out.
Yep. And she goes swimming down there and bumps her head into the spaceship. So silly. And then they bring her onto the ship, and it's kind of, this is where the comedy comes from. And God, looking at Jim Carrey's thing, like Jim Carrey at this time was not famous. I don't even think he was on in Living Color yet.
No, this predates In Living Color.
Yeah, so he's still doing those faces that he still does to this day, like to the camera, mugging a lot. But yeah, I mean, they all crowd around Gena Davis after saving her, and of course she's rightfully scared. But what makes it silly is, like, in another movie she'd be completely terrified. In this one, she accepts it so fast. She's like, "Oh, you guys are aliens? Why don't you come to my house and have some lunch? I'll make you some sandwiches."
Yeah, she makes some sandwiches, but the joke is she's like a really bad cook every time, but they don't seem to notice.
Yeah, exactly. When they all have the eggs in their mouth and she has to like pop them out, and then she just like cracks them in her hand.
She has like a handful.
Gross.
She has like a handful of eggs, and she just smashes her hands together, and that cracks all the eggs. And then, or like later, she's like, "Okay, guys, lunch is ready," and it's just like this burnt sandwich in the frying pan.
I think one of like I was surprised how hard this joke made me laugh, because it was such a one-off thing. She's looking through the fridge and she pulls out Pop-Tarts. She's like, "Oh, Pop-Tarts, these are all natural." I thought that was it's just so silly.
Like that's how it is in this movie. They're like all these. Well, it's not just the girls. Like every character in this movie is just like a total idiot almost.
Yeah,
but it makes them so funny, and it does endear you to them, because they're. I mean, like Gena Davis's character. I mean, she's just like this really nice girl, but she means really well, but she's not the bride. She's not the brightest.
Yeah. And we get to introduce, because they crash the UFO into the pool, so they have to drain it, and they call up this character. His name is Woody, played by Michael McKean, who I always love seeing in things, especially after seeing him in Better Call Saul. He's always so good. And in this one, he plays a surfer dude, which I don't think I've ever seen him play this type of character. And just the whole time he's talking about surfing as he's just getting this pull down. No matter what anybody's saying, it always connects back to surfing with this guy.
Oh yeah, I like him because like the worst things happen to him later, was like they steal his car and he gets involved in all this stuff, and he's just like totally unbothered by all this stuff happening.
Yeah, exactly. The most bothered he ever is this is a lot later in the movie, but the two aliens, Jim Carrey and Damon Wayans, I should say, Whiplock and Zebo, they get a gun from a kid, and they hold a toy gun from a kid, and they accidentally hold up a gas station. And then Michael McKean goes in, and the guy, like after they leave, and the guy's like, "Oh, someone just robbed the place, get down." And it's like, they left with the gun. And then Michael McKean's like, "Oh, but my friends are out there. I don't want them to get hurt." He's such a nice guy. He just met these two. they're his friends already, and then they steal his car.
He's such a great, funny little character that he is.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So they don't look like the aliens for long, I will say. And they like I said, she works, like her best friend Candy is a hairdresser, and she takes them to the salon, and then they shave them. And, surprise, they look like humans underneath all that fur.
Yeah. Wow. They're like anatomically correct. No extra arms or anything. And I love that scene, the reveal, because like they're like, oh, you know, Jim Carrey comes out like, oh, he's cute. And then Damon Wayans comes out, and they're so surprised that he's black. And I think she's like tubular, right, or something like that.
Well, yeah, because Damon Wayans like copies her voice. She's like, "Oh my God, you're totally black."
That's right. It's silly, but then Jeff Goldblum comes out, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's hot!" Like they're so amazed by Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, he just comes out totally shirtless and muscular, and it's just like, oh my God. And
that alien, whoa.
And what's the first thing they got to do? They got to go hit the town.
She's like, we got 3 hot guys here, and we're not gonna hit the town. And I was not expecting this movie to have a whole sequence taking place in a dance club with a dance off, and it's so full of life with like people around. This sequence is crazy.
Oh yeah, Damon Wayans does like a crazy dance sequence with like this other guy, and they're bouncing throughout the whole club. They're jumping off of things, doing backflips. It's just like a whole performance.
Yeah.
No, I like the line because this guy comes up and he's totally cocky and takes the girl that Damon Wayans was dancing with. It's like, why would you be with that zero when you can get with the hero? And then later he's dancing, Damon Wayans comes back. He's like, why would you be with that hero when we can't get with the zero?
Yeah. Oh, we do got to talk. Not every line. They soon learn to speak, but at the beginning of the movie, they get everything from TV. They watch TV and they just say it. They're like quoting like Jerry Lewis and James Dean throughout this whole movie.
Yeah, they recreate the James Dean monologue from Rebel Without a Cause, and Jerry Lewis from The Nutty Professor.
Yeah, of course. That's how they order their drinks, is what he orders in The Nutty Professor.
An Arctic polar bear.
But while Jim Carrey is out there, I think, is he the one with the long tongue? And all the women are like, I want to be with him. Well, I think the final line is, I want to have his baby.
Oh, I know. It's like, I want to have his baby, and like, I'm going home with him. I'm going home with him. No, I'm going home with them. Like, bitch.
Yeah, I love that. They look at each other, bitch. Like,
this movie's great.
Yeah, it is. And Jim Carrey just looks disheveled because all these women have been like kissing him the whole time. But on the side, Gena Davis and Jeff Goldblum get to have a nice quiet moment about how she can't find Mr. Right. And Jeff Goldblum, he might be the Mr. Right from another planet.
Yeah. What was it? He says like, maybe he's like, I haven't found Mr. Right girlfriend yet.
Yeah, I like that one. But yeah, that's kind of like the main driving plot, I would say, from this point on, is, well, protecting them from everybody, but also their romance is a big part of this movie.
She has like this whole thing where she doesn't want to fall in love with one of the alien, or Jeff Goldblum and all. And they go back to her house and they start kissing. And she's like, I don't want you to think Earth girls are easy. And she said it. And he's like, what is easy? And she just starts kissing him like this.
Let me show you. And that sex scene is wild, like with the colors and like they like kind of, it's like got it almost looks like 3D, like old school 3D. It's really interesting. And we've seen a lot of sex scenes on this show. It's nice to see something look interesting during
it's nice to see it when 2 people are consenting too.
Yeah, that too. Yes, it's an actual romance thing. But God, what happens after, where she has the nightmare, is so bizarre.
What was that?
Yeah, it like turns like sepia tone, and great imagery of her looking out the window, and like all the children playing in the street are wearing like just big alien masks.
Yeah, there's they had big alien mask on. Or like she walks into her living room and one of the guys has like a giant fish head as a head.
Yeah.
And Robbie the robot is there from Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, Robbie's there. Charles Rocket is there, and he's with a woman with 10 breasts. Like not 10 breasts, but she's got a bunch of them, and it's just ignoring Gena Davis, like being like, "What are you doing?" He's worried about his fish named Aston and Martin,
Beamer.
And Beamer. I thought that was a funny little touch because the aliens eat the fish. Yeah, that sequence is so different from the rest of the movie. I liked it. I liked that this movie was just trying a lot of different things.
This movie does. It tries a lot of different stuff. It does. They're just like, oh, what if we just had like a big like WTF moment, just like right here, and
yeah, and it works. It kept my attention. I guess I'll bring it up now. There's a very bit part in this movie at that gas station scene I mentioned where, God, what's her name? Angeline, right?
Yeah, Angeline. Yeah,
Angeline. She shows up for 10 seconds. You know, she was nominated for a Razzie.
I saw that, and I'm just like, and that's just, it's so typical of them because it's just like, she is like a pinup model type from the 80s. Like people would use her face a lot because she has such like a unique look where she had like this big platinum blonde hair and these like big pink dresses and stuff. And she appears in this movie as like the sexy lady at a gas station, and Razzies are like, oh, we're supporting actress.
She's in this for 10 seconds and has like 2 lines. It is like, the Razzies suck. I just wanted to bring this up because so I could say that.
Yeah, well, that's typical of them. It's just like, oh, somebody we recognize that's not typically an actor. Worst performance.
Horrible. I don't think she won though. So
no, she didn't. But I found out I fell down a rabbit hole when I was looking at that because there was I didn't realize, but I guess they did make a series, like a limited TV series that's on Peacock with Emmy Rossum playing.
Really?
Her.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. That's interesting.
So there you go. But
I will say, I want to say really quickly who beat her. Brooke Shields in Speed Zone, which I've never seen. So
hey, don't talk bad about Brooke Shields. She's Alice, sweet Alice, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. That was an amazing performance. So she can do no wrong ever.
Probably like my favorite moment from the movie is Zebo and Whiplock they're hanging out by the pool, and Michael McKean's character's hanging out by the pool, and he's like talking about like, hey, like we want to go score some chicks. He's like, hey man, if you want to score some chicks, we need to go to the beach. And they go to the beach, and there's a musical number called I'm a Blonde.
Yeah, this is my favorite part of the movie.
And it's just this girl, and I've had this song stuck in my head. It's, I'm a blonde, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just about how blonde girls can get away with anything because they're blonde. I love the beach they're on it.
I'm a blonde. I can talk like a baby.
She can't even spell the word blonde in the song.
Because I'm a blonde, I don't have to think. I talk like a baby, and I never pay for drinks. Don't have to worry about getting a man if I keep this blonde and I keep these tan. I never learned to read. I never learned to cook. Why should I bother when I look like I look?
Yeah, but it's a great song. It's a great sequence because there's a lot going on in it.
Yeah, it's so catchy too. Like once you hear it, like I said, I've been hearing it in my head this whole time, but it's so hard to like talk about the movie because there's so many like one-liners and stuff in here that you really have to listen to it and like just to really get the full effect of it. But this movie is just completely wild, just like insane imagery that I wouldn't have totally expected, and it's just a fun ride. Yeah,
it's so hard to talk. Like I love talking about this because we get to show like, oh, this is a great comedy, but sometimes it's hard to talk about comedy, right? It's like, oh, just see it because it's funny. I don't want to have to relay all the jokes because it's a really funny, good movie. Like I don't know, it's a good time. I've heard a lot about this movie, but I don't think enough people talk about this movie.
Well, because I've known about this movie for like a really long time, because I've known that Jim Carrey was one of my favorite actors of all
Same
time
here.
at one point. And I was at the point where I was like, I gotta see as much Jim Carrey content as I can, or like looking up like when did he get his start, and that's how I ended up watching his other claim to fame movie, Once Bitten, where
you've seen Once Bitten?
I have, where he plays a teenager that falls in love with a female vampire. But anyway, this movie I know was on the list on there, and they always made it seem like this was like one of those infamously bad movies. Like
that's what I always heard of it, like in the same context of.
And I'm like, but then I watch it, I'm like, this movie's great. Like, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's funny that you picked this movie because, because I've been watching a lot of Siskel and Ebert recently, and right before you picked that, I watched their review of it, and Siskel didn't like it, but Ebert talked about how much he really enjoyed this movie, and I was like, oh, I'm interested in that. So Ebert was probably one of the few critics out there, because I know this movie kind of got lambasted, and I don't know why. Maybe people just didn't get it. I don't know. And I don't even know what there is to get, because I just think it's funny. Like, if you don't even look at the parody part of it, it's just kind of silly. I don't know.
There's a lot of funny lines in there too. Like, there's another scene too where when she's trying to explain that aliens have crash landed, and she's telling her friend like the aliens came in, and there's this one other person that was listening like, huh, aliens? And she's like, oh, don't mind me, I'm on drugs.
Yeah, that was great. This movie has so many one-liners. One that I keep thinking about is like at the end of the movie, whenever they're leaving, and she goes to Jim Carrey, and he's like, I'll miss you the least of the bunch.
Oh yeah, well, it's because it's supposed to be like the parodying the line from Wizard of Oz when she says, Scarecrow, I'll miss you most of all. She's like, Whipluck, I'll miss you least of all.
Yeah, just a funny little diss.
But it ends up having a happy ending too. It's she falls in love with Jeff Goldblum's character, and they have a nice little happy ending at the end. Yeah,
they do. It's a nice romantic, like, solid ending. What you would expect. Nothing wrong with that.
They go with the Close Encounters of the Third Kind ending.
Yes, they do. Yeah, you're exactly right. When they fly through the donut.
Yeah. And that's a neat looking spaceship they have too. I like the way the spaceship looks. It looks like a very like retro 50s type of one.
It looks like a kid's toy rocket. The special effects in this movie are also pretty wild. I hear $10 million, and that makes sense because there's a lot of use of green screen and just some weird stuff going on. So it's interesting that they made a movie like this and made it cost and it ended up costing $10 million. I think that might be a bit too much.
Yeah. Well, this movie did have its audience though, and eventually this movie did get made into a stage production, and back in 2001, and at the time, Kristen Chenoweth played Valerie.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's it's like I said, it's had this audience. I think it definitely has its cult crowd out there.
Oh yeah.
But at the time, though, it didn't really do much for the careers of the people in this movie. But they all end up having really long, prosperous careers. In fact, right after this movie, Gena Davis ended up winning an Oscar the next year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
For The Accidental Tourist.
Yes, yeah. She won Best Supporting for that, right?
Correct.
Even though she's like the main actress in that movie.
Yeah. Who knows? Oh no, wait. Actually, no. It was the same year. Sorry.
So okay, that's funny. Too bad she wasn't nominated for Razzie and get one of those. Like, she was nominated for a Razzie and an Oscar in the same year, like Sandra Bullock.
There was one. This is a side rant, but I think there was one person that was nominated for a Razzie and an Oscar for like the same performance.
Really? I will have to. Wasn't it?
I think it was something in Yentl. I think.
Was it Yentl? Okay. There's that movie like Butterfly that was like really controversial with Stacey Keach.
No, you're thinking of Pia Zadora, where she when she won a Golden Globe, but they pretty much like paid for that.
this is a total, like, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a really good time. I really don't see it, nothing really off-putting. I would just throw it on. It's going to be a comfort movie now, I think.
Oh yeah, this is a total easy watch. I mean, if you got 90 minutes to kill, this is a really easy one. It puts you in a really great mood afterward. It's just a fun movie that doesn't get you down in the dumps or anything like that. If you're just looking for a good time, I'd say put this one on.
Yeah.
But Nathan, what are we going to be talking about next time?
All right, so next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about Bone from 1972. And you can see that on Criterion Channel and Tubi.
Perfect. Well, that'll be fun. You can watch along with us. But if you know any other Earth girls who are easy, please email us over at driveindoublefeaturepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DIDFpod. But until next time.
Until next time.